All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to our Thursday night book review, part 8. Tonight, we are still continuing on with our Souls of Paradise book review. We are doing chapters 17, 18, and 19 tonight. This is when the story really starts, getting deep, and, things start getting really chaotic and crazy. So, quite a lot of stuff to talk about tonight, especially in chapter 17, the one we're going to start with. So, to give a basic overview about what happens in the chapter itself. So, Stella comes home, after she had just left Charlie and stuff like that, what we talked about last week. She comes home to find, her house looked like it was broken into. And when she goes inside, she finds her dad on the floor and stuff like that. And she assumes in the beginning that he's passed out drunk, but then it's later determined that she finds out that he's not breathing. So she tries to resuscitate him, and it's unsuccessful, so she calls 911. Then Chris Hunt shows up, and Stella's in the corner of the room. She's crying, upset. She just lost her dad, and he says some smart-ass remark. So she goes into a fit of rage and lunges at him and actually lands a blow, knocking the cigar from his mouth. At which point, he has her arrested. And with everything going on in that moment, she enters that alternate state of reality again. In that alternate state of reality, she takes the time to say goodbye to her father. And then, Cecile shows up. And when Cecile shows up, she signals Stella to follow her. And by this time, Stella's all frustrated and pissed off because, seeing Cecile, she's just giving her riddles and stuff, and everything's chaotic and she doesn't understand it. And Stella's mind really starts to, unfold at that point. It starts to collapse, and she starts talking to Cecile. And when she's talking to Cecile, the world around her begins to crumble. And that's when the Bronze Angel finally appears, and Stella runs from it and starts to head towards Lou Autobody on the advice of Cecile. Now, when she gets to the alley behind Lou's, she goes and hides, in there, but while she's hiding in the rubble, she manages to find a scalpel. And on the scalpel, it says the Reedsville Mental Health Ward. So it prompts her to start thinking, why was she led there? Why was she meant to find this? And in her mind at that point, she believes that Dr. Clark is somehow involved in all of this. So it comes in her mind, in the forefront of her mind, to seek out Dr. Clark and be able to, try to find out what's going on. Before she could do that, though, the Bronze Angel appears before her and speaks to her, which ultimately makes Stella collapse. So, some of the things to talk about. So the chapter title is Discoloration. Now, the idea of where I got that from actually is from an artist called Don Golden. He makes music and stuff like that. And I've actually, there's 3 songs in particular, Discoloration being one of them, Last Train Home, and drawing a blank on the last one. But those songs gave me a lot of inspiration because they kind of put me in the mindset to where I needed to be in order to do my writing and stuff. So I wanted to pay tribute because the song Discoloration I first heard actually in a Shameless episode. And just the moment when you're watching Fiona and her current lover at that point, Gus, making love and stuff like that, and then you could feel all the tension. The song just fits so perfectly, and it kind of just stuck with me, that song. So that gave me the inspiration to be able to name it after that. And a lot of the things in this book, especially Stella and Charlie's relationship, I drew a lot of inspiration from that song. So when Stella comes home and she finds her dad dead, the reason why I made it that way is because back when I was drinking heavy, back in 2016 and 17, that's how I envisioned that I was going to go. I envisioned that I was going to go in the exact same manner. I believed that, I thought with my drinking habits and stuff like that, that's eventually how I was going to die, and that my daughter was going to find me that way. And it's actually what prompted me a lot to stop drinking like that. It's because I didn't want to wind up that way. I didn't want her to, have to go through that. So that's where I got that from. Stella's goodbye to her dad is, like I said, it's the whole thing I envisioned. I kind of just like thought about it one day, like the life that I was living at that point in time, and I just like put myself in my kid's shoes, and I was just like, I wouldn't want to leave her in that sort of way. So it got me, on a more, I guess, righteous path to get away from those sort of things. Now, Cecile, she's a metaphor for the meds, and I know we talked about this the last time. It's what Stella's seeing as, like, the medicine's working, so as this trauma's coming up and stuff like that, it's erasing the trauma that's in Stella's life, but the way she sees it as these memories are being erased is that it's Cecile. Cecile's coming and taking her away from, like, the terrible things that are happening. So, if you notice in the story, Cecile's always dragging her away from the trauma, and then once she's away from it, she's not thinking about it anymore. She's not living in that trauma anymore, nothing like that, because it's the medication suppressing it, so she's not coming back to it. And as Cecile appears, the most traumatic thing that could have happened to her in recent time with her dad passing just happened, and she kind of went into that altered state of reality because the medication has built up a tolerance now over the course of a couple of days with her that now she's having active trauma. That's why she goes into that state, and Cecile is ushering her away from that to ultimately suppress the memory of her father, like, and his passing and stuff. So another thing that I've been asked a lot about too, the reason why Cecile always speaks in riddles throughout the story, and she's not like clear and upfront as far as why Stella's going these places or why she's seeing these things, is like how I just said, Cecile's not really there. She's just a part of Stella's mind. She's just within Stella's mind. This is just what she's attributing to, like, the good in her life. She attributes that to Cecile. So whenever she's asking Cecile questions, Cecile's not answering her. It's because Stella doesn't know. If Stella doesn't know, then how can Cecile know? Because she's an imagination in Stella's mind. So a lot of people ask me that, why is it like this, like, not so clear path that Stella's going down, and how does it really make sense? But as you get towards the end of the book, and especially when you dive into the next book, it gives a clear-cut indication why Stella's seeing this stuff and how it's affecting her and why, in particular, she's experiencing that. So, again, Cecile only knows what Stella knows. And it's going to make a lot more sense as we dive into the third book. When I'm finished with it, you'll see as well that I'll bring that up again. Now, the world around her is crumbling, and the reason why Stella's seeing that is because her emotional state at this point is absolutely just, like, falling apart. Like, there's no stopping it. Hi, Alana. There's no stopping it at this point. So she's just, like, falling apart, and, like, her mind is just being destroyed. And, she's trying to just make it through. But within the medication and also, her borderline and stuff, everything's just coming to a crashing halt. So it's just all falling apart around her. Now, the bronze angel is actually symbolism. And the reason why it's symbolism is because Stella is conflicted, and she talks about it earlier in the book. She's conflicted about where she stands when it comes to religion, the afterlife, and everything like that. When she talks about it, she says it makes her feel uneasy. So, again, it was based off of how I felt about it at the time. Like, I was raised Catholic, but there were certain things about it that I didn't understand and I questioned and stuff. So I made Stella feel that same exact way about it. And the bronze angel is because when you think about death and the afterlife and stuff, you assume, like, God, the angels, all that stuff. So she's attributing the death and everything, because she feels like she's at the end now. She's lost everything. She's fallen apart. Everything's chaotic. So she's attributing to, like, just religion in general. So in the way she views it is like an angel's coming down to take her. But she's seeing it in a way that maybe tells her that she didn't live such the most positive life, so she might not be going to heaven, she may be going to hell. So she sees it in, like, a negative light, is how she's doing that. And Reedsville, it holds so much trauma for her. Like, there's just so much with, Charlie being in it, and, her mom leaving her, and then, her dad dying now, and Cecile dying, that's another big reason why, as she's running away from the bronze angel and stuff like that, everything's just crumbling. Because the medication at this point is starting to suppress all that trauma, and since Reedsville holds such a massive thing in her heart as far as terrible things that have happened to her, everything's just being erased. The medication is just attacking it and attacking it. The PC3 is just, like, working its way through the system. Now, there was one thing that I wanted to read from chapter 17, and it's on page 186. Okay. So, right now, Stella's in the alleyway, and the Bronze Angel's got its wings spread right above her. And, like, Stella doesn't know whether this thing is trying to kill her or what's going on. And then it begins to speak to her. So, this is the Bronze Angel talking. The time is now to hone your true self and unleash the rage that you carry in your heart. The quest you have sought after has finally rewarded you with the truth and strength. The blood spilled along the way sets a benchmark for what will come. We shed the past by destroying the chains that hold us to it. Now, it is time for you to stand in the light of the chosen and punish the souls of the weak. So then Stella goes on to say, like talking as the narrator, the creature was speaking all this to me, but it was not moving her mouth. I can understand everything it was communicating, but I was hearing it only in my head. Like the creature wasn't actually speaking anything. It was just like a stone statue kind of look. Now, the reason why I came up with that and why I had that, I actually had this like weird dream when I was younger. And in the dream, it's so strange because this dream happened like 3 different times. And every time it happened, something terrible followed it. I can't really explain it. I just kept seeing this one girl in my dream. And like one of the most recent time that it happened was back in, I think, 2015 or 16. Like I just seen her again in my dream. It was like the 3rd time. And she was like a taller woman. And she had like her hair parted, like covering her face like this, like Debbie from the Wild Thornberries. But it was like shorter. It cut off right here. And she was always wearing like a leather jacket. And she had like these very like sharp pointed like heel boots. 3 different times over the course of my years did I see that, stemming back as early as I believe the 5th grade. And something always terrible happened. The last time I found out that my ex was cheating on me shortly after that dream had happened. And it was just such a strange thing, and it always stuck with me. So I wanted to put that in there because when that person in my dream would talk, she also wouldn't move her mouth. But like you could almost hear like a slight whisper or mumble or something like that. But in my head, I knew exactly what she was saying. So I put that in there, and it also ties into the story because these are all things in Stella's mind. So if the Bronze Angel isn't talking or anything like that, Stella already knows what it's thinking because it's a part of her. It's in her mind. She already knows that the message is being relayed. It's just another part of her that's speaking out and manifesting itself into something that frightens her, which is religion. So that right there is what I have for chapter 17. Now we're going to really start getting into the very end of the book. There's only 4 chapters left. I'm going to do 2 of them tonight as well, and then next week we'll do our last 2 to finish the book out. So to bring us on to chapter 18. Now remember in this last chapter, when Stella punched Hunt in the face and knocked the cigar out of his mouth, he was having his police officers load her into the car before she went into that trance-like state. Now, just because she was in that state, the reality is that she was still being loaded in that police car. She just wasn't with it. So when the story picks back up and she awakens, she's in an interrogation room in the police station. Now, Hunt comes in at that point, and he goes to question her about what's going on. And when he questions her, she's not going to budge. She doesn't respect this guy. She doesn't like this guy. He's an arrogant asshole, and she just wants no part of it. So she just basically tells him to screw off, and she wants a lawyer, and she's not going to deal with this. So at that point, he leaves the room and shuts the door behind him. So she describes how she feels like a caged animal. She's trying to get out of here. She knows like the door's locked. The police wouldn't leave it open. But then suddenly the door opens a little bit. And she sees it open, so she says, well, this is the perfect opportunity to get out. So she winds up leaving, and she knows that this is the point. I got to get out of here, and I'm going to Dr. Clark's office. I got to figure out how she's involved with this, or if she's involved with this, and get to the bottom of it. So she runs out of the police station towards Clark's office, which isn't that far of a run. But when she gets there, she winds up tripping outside of the office and falls near a set of bushes, to which she discovers a broken cell phone in that bushes. Now, when she picks it up, she realizes like it's this bizarre orange case with like a little duck on the back, and it was Cecile's. It was just a broken cell phone that they never found with her. So it really starts to put in her mind, well, why would this be at her office of all places? Like, it doesn't make sense. So she tries to open the door. Keep in mind, it's nighttime, so she can't get in. So she winds up taking a rock and breaking it and busting through the actual glass, reaching in, unlocking it, and then going inside. Now, when she does get inside, she starts rummaging through the office. She starts trying to figure out anything and everything she possibly can, and she winds up finding a scalpel on her desk, and it's like the one that she had envisioned. So she uses that and winds up breaking into one of the drawers. And when she breaks into one of the drawers, she finds something, and then that's where the chapter leaves off. It kind of leaves you on a cliffhanger as to, what did she exactly find. There's not a whole lot of Easter eggs on this chapter itself. It's kind of just like a push chapter to get you to the main one, and, explain how Stella got from the police station to, Dr. Clark's office. Now, I said in, I think the last one, or maybe the one before that, that Detective Hunt was based off of my old boss. Well, as coincidence has it, it's funny, he was my old boss a year and a half ago, and now he's back. So, I realized today that him being back and stuff like that puts me in such a state that, like, it's miserable. Like, he makes the office absolutely miserable, and it actually got me to write today. So I knocked out, in the last 24 hours, I've knocked out 24 pages on the third book. So there is a plus side to it, at least. It sucks, him being back, but there is a plus side. But, the whole demeanor and everything of Hunt is based off of him, even down to, like, the smoking cigars and stuff like that. Like, even when my boss was outside today, I was having a cigarette, and he came up to me and was smoking a cigar, and he was just being an arrogant asshole. And I was just sitting there, I was just like, oh my God, like, I really don't want to keep going forward with this fucking guy. But, you got to have a job, you got to do what you got to do. But, it was just ridiculous that, how much they're so similar. But I didn't realize when I was writing it that I was basing it off of him. It just was like inspiration that I had, and then when I started rereading, I was like, oh, it's like, now, all right, now I'm understanding where I got that idea from. So when Stella's in the interrogation room and Hunt leaves because she asked for a lawyer, as a reader, you're wondering, how in the police station did the door just suddenly open? And it's not explained in this book, but when we get into the second book, it actually is explained that Hunt actually opened the door a little bit and let her get out because he wanted to see where she would go. If she was involved with this, what kind of evidence she would try to hide, anything like that. So he just opened the door a little bit because he knew it was late at night and all the other officers were taking care of, like, the crime scene at her house and stuff. So he basically let her out in the hopes that he would lead her to something that was going to get her. But also at the same time, having her dead to rights that she left while she was detained from the police station. So even if she didn't lead him to anywhere, he could arrest her on something and actually have her, like, done. Because, he doesn't care for her too much, just as much as she doesn't care for him. So that was just his way of doing it. And luckily for him, she did, in the next chapter, wind up leading him right to where he needed to be. So chapter 19, the last part of this, is it's called The Truth at Last. And the reason why it's called that is because you're finally getting the truth as to what has been going on this entire story. And in this part, Stella finds Cecile's file when she breaks into that cabinet, and then she sees that Dr. Clark had been treating her. She finds out that Cecile was also prescribed the same medication, PC3, and Stella calls Clark and demands her to come down to her office. While she's waiting for Clark to get there, she finds a photo of her family that Clark had taken that was on her desk, or inside her desk. And it's the same memory that Stella was having about, like, the last time that she had saw her mom. Now, she's wondering, like, how the hell does she have this photo? Like, how is she involved with it? And it kind of starts, like, piecing together, like, is this woman my mother? Now, when Clark gets there, she starts blaming it all on Stella's father and saying that, yes, I am your mother. Like, I just wanted to be a part of your guys' lives, but it's your father's fault and stuff. She also admits to having something to do with Thomas and Patrick's death. Clark also admits to having something to do with Cecile's death. Then, Stella, at this point, hearing all this, now her emotional state is just completely gone. She's just gone now at this point. It's just way too much to handle. So Clark starts, like, the world starts manifesting before her. And within that, Clark starts, like, becoming, like, the angel. Like, they're just, like, going back and forth, back and forth. And Stella has to fight it, so she happens to find, like, a fire axe, and she starts hitting at it and stuff, but the bronze angel, like, knocks her down, and Stella's, like, basically at that point just about to admit defeat, like, knowing that the monster was going to kill her and stuff like that. But then Cecile appears, and it motivates Stella to get back up and fight. Stella winds up defeating the angel and then leaves with Cecile to go find her dad. And that's how that chapter ends. Now, I had said earlier in the videos that I would explain Dr. Clark and where I got her like idea for where I got my motivation to create her. Well, just as in the book, she's Stella'S mom. So I got a lot of the motivation and insight to create Dr. Clark after my own mom. And, you know, the way that she, like, talks and stuff like that within the book, like how she's blaming the fact that she had to have a part in killing Thomas and killing Patrick, she blames it on everybody else. And it's the same way my mom always was. She would never take ownership for anything she did. She'd always blame it on somebody else. And it's the same way that she would berate my father. Like when I would go visit at her house, she would just sit there and just constantly berate him. And it was just disgusting. But that's where a lot of the inspiration, the anger and stuff like that came from in creating that character. So with that being said, there was 2 pages, actually the last 2 pages of that chapter that I wanted to read. And that's 204 and 205. Okay. So at this point in the book, Stella's on the ground and she's admitting defeat. She's the Bronze Angel's got her pegged. Like she's just done. This is the end. I'm letting it go, and it's just time. Stella says, I felt like this was it. I had no more fight in me, and I had this overwhelming feeling that this was my time to go. I just let my body go limp as the creature dragged me across the ground. I started to play out pieces of my life in my head. I could see my dad and Cecile smiling at me and us all being a family. I was ready to be with them again. There was nothing left for me here. The monster stopped dragging me and stood over my body and looked down at me and said, This is it, my dear, let it all go. We will be one again and you will no longer have to cower in silence with the weak and pathetic. The monster raising its sharp claws into the air, signaling they were about to come crashing down on me. I let out a few tears, and I knew at this point I was ready to die. Then suddenly a burst of light went hurling towards the monster, knocking it into the ground. I slowly looked over in the direction of where it came from and saw Cecile hovering in the distance. Cecile says, Stella, get up and kill this bitch. Just hearing those words come from Cecile gave me the fight I needed to pull myself together. I picked myself up, grabbed the axe, and walked over to the monster who was struggling to get itself up. I stood directly in front of it and lifted the axe over my head. The monster, looking up at me, said, You can't do this, child. We are one and we must unite. Think of the paradise your sacrifice could unveil. I chuckled a bit, but having no clue what the hell this thing was speaking of, I said, Your paradise is lost, you delusional bitch. Family is forever, and you're not my fucking family. I came down with the heavy axe, nearly splitting the creature's head in 2 pieces. The creature fell into the ground, and the world began to spiral out of control. I stood there, letting everything fall apart around me, covered in the monster's blood and some of my own. I began to walk over to Cecile, and we both smiled. I reached my hand out for hers and said, I'm ready, Cecile. Let's go find Dad. Cecile smiled at me, and then it all went black. So that's like the powerful ending part of it. It's not the end of the book. Like I said, there's still 2 chapters left to kind of sum up what's going on and why this just happened. But again, you got to remember, when you're reading this, you're supposed to be confused. It's not supposed to make sense. It's only when you get into book 2 do you really start to understand why she's seeing this stuff, but I'm giving you the insight now as kind of a background. So it's not yet confirmed until the 3rd book, because like I said, I have it mapped out. It may not be all written yet, but I do have it mapped out on how it's going to play out. And it is going to be talked about in the 3rd book as to what that moment right there signifies. Why she was fighting the Bronze Angel, but it was also merging with, you know, her mom and stuff like that. Like why it all will come full circle and be understood. And I don't want to give away why, because then, you know, it kind of takes away from the book I'm writing, but it will make sense, I promise you. So all you need to know at that point is that she does confront her mom. She does find out that she's involved with it. She is having all this, but the medication is so heavy right now in her and taking control of her that it's making all of that collapse on her. That was just like the final straw. To find out all that information you're talking about in the course of maybe like 2 hours, from her father, finding her father dead, to finding out that her mom was involved with everything. Like that just like was too much for her to handle, and the medication working its magic just completely just warped her mind. And a little sneak preview, because we are going to be getting into my 2nd book, Paradise Reborn, in 2 weeks. You will see Stella again, and in that you're going to see her. When you first see her, she has no memory of anything. And the reason is because the PC3 has just wiped her mind clean. Yes, as Stormy's saying right there, you can absolutely grab book 1 and 2 on Amazon Kindle for 99 cents. I always suggest that, so you guys can read along and stuff like that, because especially Paradise Reborn, there's so much more detail. There's going to be so much more Easter eggs that we're going to dive into, and you guys are going to see it. And again, it's my favorite book that I've written so far. It's the one I'm the most proud of. Obviously the first one has a special place in my heart because it was my first book, but Paradise Reborn was like my skills put to the test as an author, to really give it my all and, come up with like a really great story, really great character development and everything. And, I said that as we went on and stuff like that, I would do like more of an introduction, and I always forget to do it, but Stormy was kind enough to make me these tapestries based on the characters and stuff that I have. So, you have Stella, and then you have the cover of the book. Below that, you have Pete, you have Betty, Nurse Betty, and she's not like a huge role in the first book, but you will see her a lot in the second book, and you'll see just how deep that goes with her being attributed to Stella. On the bottom, you have the Diligent Company, and that's the company that synthesizes the drug PC3. And then down here, you have a shot of Detective Hunt lighting up his cigar. You can also see a clearer version of it right there. Same with the Diligent Company. These are going to be the characters that we're going to be getting introduced to, and I'll dive into that when we get into the next book. Now, next Thursday is going to be our last session when it comes to this book. We have 2 chapters left. Chapter 20, Where is My Mind? And Chapter 21, called simply PC3. Now, at the end of that, I'll make the story come full circle. I'll give the explanations on, how I concluded it, and then where I wanted to go to get into Paradise Reborn, how I got there and everything. And then when we reconvene the following Thursday, that's when, we'll start reading Paradise Reborn. It is a extremely extensive book. I'm going to try to keep up with the 3 chapters. I don't know that I'll be able to do it. That's essentially, reading a lot just to get caught up with it again and jot down all the Easter eggs and stuff. But I will do my best, so we'll just take it week by week and figure out where we want to go with that. For now, I can promise, though, when we go into it, I will definitely do the prologue, and I will definitely do the first chapter. And the first chapter, it's going to take me a little while just to even get into that, because there's just so much information put out about the new character, which you see all the way at the top there, Gwen Murphy. Because Stella is not the main character in the second book. And the reason for that will be explained when we actually get into the second book. When this book concludes, you will see that we don't even know where Stella is. But it will all make sense. And like I said, as we get into the second book, if you've been following along with us to, know what's going on with this book, it'll really piece together. So, with that being said, I don't have anything else for tonight. I am going to be jumping off this call because, like I said earlier, I actually got the motivation to knock out an entire chapter. So I'm up to page 78 now in the third book. I have 3 full chapters done. They're very, very big chapters, way bigger than my first book, because I just want it to be a very, I guess a very satisfying conclusion to the series. I really want that book to be, when you guys are done reading it, to just be like, okay, it all makes sense. It's come full circle. Great way to end it. So I want to give it my all. So I've been taking my time on it. And, a lot of it has to do with writer's block and stuff, too, that although I know where the story's going, the fillers in between all the chapters and stuff, it's, it's a little much. Again, I just want to give the best product I possibly can to bring such a conclusion to something that has been so important in my own life. I mean, as you can see, wearing the brand and everything. We have a Zazzle shop that if you guys are interested in getting anything like that, you can certainly follow the links on my TikTok or the Facebook page and stuff, and it will take you to that. The next time we meet will be next Tuesday for something that I know I'm very excited about and Stormy's very excited about. For our Tuesday night healing, we are going to be talking about the dating world, online dating, just regular dating, all of that, how toxic it's become, how things have changed so much over the years, how people really aren't getting into relationships anymore, and the reasons why, and the facts to back it. Personal experiences from both of us on where we stand in life on that, and our opinions. And it's just going to be a good episode. And if you guys haven't seen any of our Tuesday night healings before, we like to tackle lots of different subjects, and we're always up for ideas on where to go with that. We come up with a lot of ideas on our own, but you're always welcome to join us and be a part of that and, engage. We want to hear from you. It affects us just as much as it affects everybody else too. So, it's always good to be a part of that because it's all about healing. It's helping each other heal. So, tune in at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time next Tuesday for that video. With that being said, I thank you guys for, sitting through this and, listening to the Easter eggs that come with the book. And like I said, if you want to get caught up on the other Easter eggs that we did, you can go on the YouTube channel. It's the Paradise Collection. The link is also on my TikTok. And you can check out all of the reruns of the Tuesday night healings and the Thursday night book reviews. So thank you guys again, and I will see you next Tuesday for our online dating talk.